And now it's a podcast.
And now it's a podcast featuring your host, StudMuffin Supreme.
What's going on, guys? This is Aaron, aka StudMuffin Supreme, and welcome to episode 3 of And Now It's a Podcast. And there goes my phone. Sorry. We've been away for a minute. Been focused a lot on the Rated R Wrestling podcast. So if you're a fan of pro wrestling, check it out. I'll try to leave some sort of link to the channel. Like I said, if you're a fan of pro wrestling and discussions of that, I would recommend going over and checking out that channel. But like I've stated plenty of times before on different platforms, this podcast is just to talk about pretty much everything. My niche is that I have no niche. I say that a lot, and that's what we're going to be doing here on this show. And it's been a minute since I did the first 2 episodes. As you can tell, I've upgraded the setup a little bit. Better microphone, new cool layout, as you can see here. This may not even be the permanent thing going forward. I just think it's a step forward in what I've been doing. So I really didn't have too much to talk about today, like planned. I mean, we're going to talk about stuff, but I didn't have anything written down. I'm just riffing. So if you enjoy that, stick around and we'll see what happens. But anyway, just a couple of things I wanted to talk about. Like I mentioned, the Rated R Wrestling podcast. Those of you that aren't familiar or not fans of pro wrestling, that's a podcast that I started with my buddy Mike and then my brother Kyle, Kyle's the one that does the Dr. Now videos with me. And we started that in October because it was just something that we've always wanted to do. We wanted to talk about wrestling, right? And I'm not going to get into the wrestling nitty gritty because I know some people may not be into that. But what I'd like to talk about is something that's recently happened with us over on that side of YouTube. So my co-host Mike, his wife Ashley, she was a big fan of pro wrestling. And I think it was like episode 4 of that podcast. My brother, who's the other co-host, wasn't able to make it. So we were able to get Ashley to substitute for him. And she was a relatively new fan of pro wrestling. So it was fun to have conversations with her and sort of get her perspective on things. And one appearance turned into another appearance, and she started coming in more often. And then eventually she came in along with Kyle. So there was 4 of us there. And it got to the point where, I basically viewed her as the 4th member of the podcast because it got to a point where with our schedules, sorry, I didn't mean to touch the microphone, with our schedules, the off days that Mike was going to be available to do the podcast in person, she was also off. So regardless, it felt like that she was just going to be on the podcast going forward. And then a little bit last week, we got the news that she had been in a car accident. I won't go into the details because it's not my business or my place to tell you. But suffice to say, we got the unfortunate news that she ultimately lost her life. 29 years old. She just got married to Mike in the summer of 2024, which hits home with me because I was scheduled to be the best man at their wedding, and I would have looked forward and would have been honored to do so. But the day of their wedding happened to be the day that my family put my grandfather in the ground at his funeral. And Mike and Ashley were very understanding and gracious, and understanding the fact that I couldn't make it. As much as I wanted to be there, I would have loved to have been there. But they understood how close I was to my grandfather. And they even told me that at their wedding they had a placement for people that lost their loved ones that they couldn't be at the wedding. So it's sort of like a memorial thing. You've probably seen these at weddings. Well, they told me that they had a special spot for my grandfather, which I thought was a very nice gesture. So I've always appreciated that. But yeah, so they were married about almost 2 years ago, and I feel so bad for Mike. I couldn't imagine losing my wife. So I can't imagine what he's going through. He's a lot stronger than I think I could be, and I've talked to him, and we hung out with him just to keep his spirits up, and I just want to make sure he realizes that he's not alone. And also, if you're in a similar situation, or you know anybody that was in a similar situation, depression, having lonely thoughts, you're not alone. I know sometimes it may seem like that way, and trust me, I'm not a psychologist. I don't even play one on TV. But just know that there are people out there that can be there for you. So my thoughts and my prayers and my good vibes are always going out to Mike. And I know most people may not know him on there, but if you do, if you want to just throw that out in the ether to, you know, help him get through this hard time. And it was hard too, because it was hard for me. Obviously nothing compared to him, but she was very, I was very close to her. I got closer to her over time because, you know, obviously they're married. So most of the time that I would go hang out with him, she was there, and she was just a really cool person and always very bright and funny and all that stuff. And it was definitely hard to see that happen and see him go through that. And we're going to be carrying on with the Rated R Wrestling podcast. He wants to do that. He was okay with it. He wanted to do it in her honor. I was okay with doing that. We did, me and my brother, the other co-host, we had contemplated, because we weren't sure what he wanted to do, because, you know, we weren't sure how Mike was going to handle it. We literally did our 12th episode a few days before she died, and she was on it. So it'd be very hard to go back and try to listen or watch back our old episodes that she's on. So we figured either A, he'd want to take a break, B, he'd want to take a very extended break, or, you know, wanted to get back into a gung-ho, or the other option was just completely not do it anymore, which we would have understood any of those options. We would have completely understood that. So he wants to continue forward. We're fully on board with that. We're going to keep moving forward. Hopefully the weather permits. We're supposed to do one here Sunday, let's see, the 23rd, 4th, 25th of January, but there's a big winter storm coming through, if you're not familiar with what's going on in the southern part of the United States right now. So it's yet to be determined. I mean, if it's going to be a treacherous tundra, we're not going to be able to do it. But we are going to keep moving forward. So, again, love you, Mike. You're a brother to me. My thoughts and everything go out with you. And if you guys could, like I said, throw those vibes out there, that would be great. But anyway, other things going on. Obviously, this podcast here, my solo one, I want to try to do it more. I'm still trying to figure out, not necessarily what I want to talk about, because I've always said that my niche is I have no niche. I keep hitting the microphone, so I'm sorry if that picks up in the audio of this podcast. But I just want to talk about a lot of cool stuff. I want to talk more about like Marvel and the MCU, because, you know, Doomsday's coming out, right? And I'm super pumped about that. I can't wait. I can't wait to that freaking movie comes out. Oh man. I want to talk about eventually Fallout stuff, because I love the Fallout games, and the Fallout TV show is on Amazon Prime right now. That's a big talking point. And actually, Mike is a huge Fallout fan as well. So maybe on this show, eventually we'll have a discussion. I'd like to get my friend Lindy in here on this too, because she's recently become a big Fallout fan since the show started, the first season of it. So I'd love to have a conversation, maybe with both of them at the same time, or get to both of them too, regardless if they're together or separate. That would be a great conversation because I could talk for hours about Fallout. I talk for hours about video games. Mass Effect's another big one comes to mind that we might talk about. Let's see, Dragon Ball Z. I love Dragon Ball Z. There's other animes I like. We'll talk about it, but that's like Dragon Ball Z and Yu-Gi-Oh are like my top two. I'm a Yu-Gi-Oh player, not a professional one. I've been to a few tournaments, regional tournaments in the past, so I could tell you some stories about that. Just know that, like I said, some people may not know about a lot about certain things. That's okay. I mean, you don't have to listen through the entire podcast. If there's something I'm talking about that's not necessarily interesting to you, that's fine. You don't have to listen to it, or you can stick around and maybe you might find what I say interesting. So, what are we going to talk about today? That's a good question. Here's something I want to talk about. Recently, a lot of big things have been happening. Well, big for me. Some people might look at that and think, "Oh, that's not a big deal," but they're big to me. So, like I mentioned, the Rated R Wrestling podcast. That a big part of the reason that exists is because of the podcast that I was on before that. See, I had never done a podcast before, and I was approached to be a guest on a podcast called Friends of the Squared Circle. It's another pro wrestling podcast hosted by a buddy of mine, Cal Anders, who goes by Crander Q. Best beard in pro wrestling. If you get it, you get it. And he was a fan of mine from TikTok, and he really wanted to interview me because I was a fan of pro wrestling, and we did that, and that was really fun. And I got the idea to like, oh, this is awesome experience. So I told Mike and I told Kyle, and they're like, well, let's do one of ours. Let's do one on wrestling. So I credit Cal Crander Q for opening the door for the podcast, and also not only just with the Rated R Wrestling podcast, but after that, it seemed like things started rolling. I started getting offers to do other things like the In Shape. It's a male shapewear brand. Not too long after that, they started reaching out to me, wanting to send me free products to advertise. I actually have it on my Instagram. I did some videos for In Shape. Another shapewear brand's talking to me about potentially doing an affiliation. So things like that. Also, as far as the podcast thing goes, not too long after that, I got invited to do Pookie in Paradise. Shout out to those guys. They reached out to me because they saw me on Instagram, saw some of my newer videos, and they wanted to interview me. I mean, that's freaking cool, right? To me, that's awesome. And like, granted, I mean, this isn't like the Joe Rogan Experience level of podcast, right? I mean, as far as popularity, but I understand that people start out in other places. So I have no problem going on someone's podcast. Doesn't matter how many viewers or followers they have. If they're interested in talking to me, they're worth having a conversation with. And I really enjoyed the conversation I had with those fine folks. I maybe leave a link to my podcast appearance with them. And then within the same week that I did that podcast, I got invited by my buddy Scott to his podcast, This Seemed Like a Good Idea, which was more of another fun interview I did. And both of those interviews, they were asking me about, my TikToks, and we touched upon my AGT appearance because I was on AGT. I told that story in like the last episode of the podcast, right? So I did, and that was fun because I got to tell my story again, and they were very fascinated with the story that I was telling. So I'm glad we had that conversation. But they also were talking about like my TikTok videos, the Tatar videos the most recent things that have been sort of making my channel blow up, basically. So that led to an even more interesting opportunity, because here recently I received not a shout out, but a direct message from someone at Loudwire, which, if you're not familiar, Loudwire is a YouTube channel, but they're also like an online website magazine that covers rock and heavy metal. And I am a rock and heavy metal aficionado. I love that. That's my favorite genre of music, right? And they reached out to me, which is great because I watched their YouTube channel for years. And the fact that they reached out to me on Instagram was crazy. And they're like, we saw your Tatar videos, which, if you're not familiar with my Tatar videos, I probably should explain and elaborate. So basically, I play along to predominantly guitar riffs, licks, solos, what have you. And I try to match the beat and the timing by scooping and playing my man boobs, basically. But anyway, they liked my videos, and because I do a lot with rock and metal, they were like, we want to interview you. That was crazy. I did an online article interview. You can look at it. You can find it up on Loudwire now if you're interested in learning about what I said in that interview. I go through some things. The title of that article too was fantastic. It was like, man goes viral on the internet for playing metal or shredding with metal songs on his man boobs. One of the greatest article titles I've ever seen in my life. And I know I sound a little biased because I'm in it and I'm the subject of it, but it was crazy. And then the comments were fantastic. There was a few that like, this is cool, but there was a lot of people like, hell no, we're not dealing with that. This is stupid. And some guy said, wow, Loudwire is really desperate for news, right? It's like, I knew that was coming. I experienced that with AGT when my episode aired on there, and the Instagram and the TikTok comments were crazy. People really loved to tell me how they felt about that. But yeah, the fact that I got interviewed for a pretty well-known magazine article, online web, what have you, felt like a big deal to me. Like, it feels like things are in motion. I'm wanting to put myself out there more. Obviously the end goal, guys, is to, get higher in internet fame, I suppose, right? I mean, it's not something that I've always realistically thought I would be able to attain, but these opportunities every year just seem to like open up, and it's like, I will embrace that because, I have no problem putting myself out there. And I think it's just something that I really want to do. And there was my Facebook thing, ding, so yeah, that's been a great happening. And so I hope more comes out of that. I don't know how legit this is, and I won't divulge in it too much just in case, but I got another email from somebody with an opportunity that, if it's legit, I'm not sure how I'm going to approach it. No, it's not an OF, so don't get your hopes up. There's the few people out there like, holy cow, he's got OnlyFans. Oh my God. No. I mentioned this, speaking of OF, I mentioned this on, I believe it was Pookie in Paradise. It was either Pookie in Paradise or This Seemed Like a Good Idea. One of those two podcasts. I mentioned that I wanted to do an OnlyFans that was like literally fans, like oscillating fans, like box fans, ceiling fans, like just the idea of doing like a paid subscription, a troll account, just to see if anybody would be willing to pay to do that. It was like unlock for $20 to see some really hot oscillation from a nice hot ceiling fan, or get into this box fan, something like that. Just like a troll, something like that. I always thought that'd be a funny idea. It puts me in the mind of like Andy Kaufman, just like the adverse, or what's the word? Your expectations are completely taken to a left field. So who knows? Maybe one day that'll happen. I don't know if the actual website would appreciate that. I don't know if that's the only thing you can upload to that. I don't know. I don't know how that works. I don't know if that's the only thing that you can upload to that website, or if you can upload other things. I don't know. But maybe one day we'll actually get all that stuff. But another thing I'd like to talk about. Excuse me. Oh, I went down the wrong pipe. So, the title of the podcast, and now it's a podcast. I may have touched upon it in one of the first 2 episodes. I don't know. But I want to go ahead and talk to you about it now. I've explained the origins of the Tatar on other podcasts. So if you're not familiar with it, let's talk about that. Okay? If you're watching me now, you may have seen my Tatar videos. And like I said, it's just me playing on my man boobs to rock and metal music. Also, I incorporate other types of music too. If it's got a cool riff beat that I can time it along with, I'll do it. But the reason I started doing that, and I've talked about this on other podcasts too, basically it was only because I was just bored one day, and I think I was listening to an Ozzy song, because this was right around the time that he passed. And so what I was doing is they were playing like the solo to Crazy Train, which is one of Ozzy's biggest hits. And I was just fiddle fucking around on my man boobs and just going along with the beat. You know, you can hear, I don't know if you can hear it slap, but that's how it was. And I figured that I could pretty much go along with the rhythm. Credit a lot of that to Guitar Hero, because that game really taught me how to do rhythm and all that stuff. So I credit that a lot with it. And so yeah, that's basically how that came about. And then I did like I did like 1 or 2, and then like I officially did a Tatar for the Crazy Train solo for Ozzy right after he passed. And those blew up, and then I just kept doing different songs that I knew, and then I would get some random requests, and I've done one here or there. But yeah, that's what the Tatar thing is. I've explained it before. It's the new thing that I do on my channel. Whether it goes much longer, I don't know. We'll see. I'll continue doing them as long as they're entertaining, as long as I can do a good song. We'll see. But like I said, the name of the podcast is a derivative from one of the first things that really blew me up on TikTok. And now it's a hat. If you're not familiar with that, that's where I took a little red Solo cup. I was hoping I could see one around here. I usually keep one around me just in case, but I don't seem to have one. But I would take it and put it on top of my head upside down and then proclaim, and now it's a hat. I've always liked telling this story of why I came up with, or how I came up with that. See, originally I had 2 TikTok accounts. The first one was the StudMuffin Supreme. This one is just StudMuffin Supreme. And the first account got shut down because I had too many video violations. I used to make a lot of darker humor, like making a lot of jokes about my uncle keeping me in his basement. But that's just my theory on why it was taken down. And before, like not too long before it was taken down, I did the Now It's a Hat, the first one. So when I made my second account and I was able to keep the StudMuffin name, I just decided I'm going to try something, because I couldn't hit anything on the new account. Like, my views were horribly low, no matter what I would do. I would re-upload my most popular videos from my first account and it wasn't getting nothing. So I was just like, I'm just going to try and see what sticks. And then I revisited the Now It's a Hat. I did it and it blew up. And I just started doing more of them. And I've never really had anybody bring up the fact that I totally ripped off Family Guy. And I ripped them off without really ripping them off. It's weird. I see for years I thought I straight up ripped them off one for one, but I technically did. So if you're familiar with Family Guy and Peter Griffin, you know, that guy. I always thought that he did a thing where he put a book on his head and went, and now it's a hat. So I always thought I was ripping him off verbatim, but technically I wasn't. See, there's a cutaway skit in one of the old Family Guys where he's in a book club and he takes the book and he goes, "The book can also be a hat," and he places it on his head. So that's where the high pitch affectation comes from. It's doing it's an homage to Peter Griffin. So that's where that comes from, if anybody was curious. And that was my first big viral series, like super viral series. And the key to it was to put things on my head and keep them on my head without falling and saying it's a hat. Trust me, there have been so many things I've attempted to put on my head that just for whatever reason wouldn't stay on my head, because the top of my head's got I guess it's not flat. So I have to really be careful what I put on there, because if it's not put in the right spot, it'll fall off. There's been so many of those freaking videos that I would film, and before I could finish saying, "and now it's a hat," it would fall off. Any slight movement, they would fall off, right? So I did a lot of those. The cool part about that was where I first started getting recognized by outside brands. Like, I remember getting an Instagram message from Chipotle, because I had done a video where I took a Chipotle burrito and put it on my head and went, "Now it's a hat." And they somehow saw that and they messaged me on my Instagram, not my TikTok, but my Instagram. The video wasn't even on my Instagram, but they messaged me and they said, "Hey, can we upload this video to our," it was either their TikTok or, I know it wasn't their TikTok. It was one of their pages. And I was like, "Sure." I mean, it wasn't a paying gig. They weren't paying to do it, but I figured this would be a good potential exposure. So I'm cool with that. So that was the first kind of, thing that, like, oh, first opportunity. So, the hats thing, they went for a while. They were racking a ton of views. And then I started slowing down with those because just didn't get around to doing it. And two, I started running out of ideas of things to put on my head. So eventually I got to the point where those videos weren't hitting as much. So then I started doing my dance videos. Now, I've told this story plenty of times, so I don't want to beat a dead horse. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about the name of this show and why it's called that. Cool play on it. Now it's a podcast. So if you didn't know, now you know. So yeah, thanks for listening to that, right? Okay. What else can I talk about? Let's see. Well, it's the closest one to me. So you see this? For those who aren't watching, I'm holding a Funko Pop. I wish I could show you. Let's see. Yeah, you see all that? I'll put the camera back. For those that are just listening, I am currently just showing my setup. I've got so many Funko Pops, and I got a whole drawer full of them. Yeah, you love that? Yeah, Funko Pops, baby. All right, let me adjust this camera. Hopefully it's not too terrible. Okay, but yeah, I have a lot of Funko Pops. And so we'll talk about that too. So if anybody that likes Funko Pops, here we go. We're going to talk about them. I was sort of aware of them when they were first popular. They've been around for a long time that I realize now. I mean, I had to have seen them in the past, but I just never was into them because honestly, I've never really been a solid collectible collector. I mean, the closest thing I can think of was my pro wrestling toys when I was younger, but those things get broken and all that stuff. So those never mounted to anything. And I'm trying to think back to the first Funko Pop that I got, which I think, if I'm not mistaken, was a gift for my sister. She actually started getting into Funko Pops a little bit before I did. She got me a Bob Ross Deadpool as Bob Ross Funko Pop, which I still have somewhere around here. But yeah, that was I think that was the first one I got. And I was like, okay, well, I'll hold on to this because it's a gift from my sister. And plus I like Bob Ross and Deadpool. So this is cool. I remember, I think I got a Funko Pop in like a Loot Crate. And at the time when I was getting Loot Crates, around like 2015, I started getting collectibles, like things in Loot Crates I would hold on to. I would buy like cups from Spencer's with like Deadpool or Dragon Ball Z. I have like mugs. I used to have a lot of mugs. That was like the first real thing I was collecting, was like different cool mugs. And then the Funko Pop happened, and then I would get one, maybe one here or there. I did get one. I ordered a WWE wrestling game once. I pre-ordered like a special collector's edition, and it came one with the wrestler Ric Flair, which I no longer have that one, but I had that. So like I only had a few here, a pocket of that, right? And in between that time, I developed a big collection of video games, most specifically when COVID hit. And I know I'm sidetracking a little bit, but I'm building up to it, so just trust me. So I had a Funko Pop here and there, but like my first taste of collecting was video games, and it really picked off in COVID because prior to that, when I first got my PS4, like I had a bad habit of not having many games in my library, and I maybe had 10 at the most. Because I had a big problem, I would, well, it wasn't really a problem, but if as collecting a games purpose was a problem, I would sell games to GameStop, trade them in for other things, and I could go on a tangent about that whole story, but I won't. But during COVID, online ordering was a big thing, and a little bit prior to that, I started getting into the idea of collecting retro games, like for the PS2, because I got into a guy named Metal Jesus Rocks. Shout out to him. He was doing a lot of retro game collecting, and I really got into it, and I wanted to do it, and I started doing that. And then COVID was really big, so you were ordering things online, and at the time, GameStop was doing like really awesome deals on some of their used games, like Xbox 360s and stuff like that. And I would go to, even after COVID, I would go to these big flea markets, and they would go to these old like 360 games and stuff. So, I mean, I had a little bit of money coming in, so I'm like, I started getting into this obsession. I was just going out and buying games. Like GameStop would have these great deals, right? And I would like come away with like so many different games. I got obsessed with getting games in a series. Like I wanted to get all the Darksiders games. I wanted to get all the Far Cry games I could. I wanted to get all the Assassin's Creed games I could. The Final Fantasy games that I could for like PS4 and Xbox One. So I have like a whole bunch of those over there. That was my big thing. And then that petered off. And when that petered off, and I don't really have a reason why, it just kind of did. I just quit buying games that much. And it's kind of been, I think probably the subconscious reason why is because I never get around to play a lot of them. Just don't have a lot of time for it. Because there's a lot of games I've bought and that I bought during that crazy collecting phase that I've yet to touch. So it's possible. It's been like that, right? So when that faded out, I remember getting a Qui-Gon Jinn Funko Pop from my buddy Lindy for my birthday. Qui-Gon Jinn is like my favorite Star Wars character. So that kind of opened my eyes to wanting to collect those, and I got into the idea of collecting. So here and there I would get one, and then I really started getting into going to like Five Below, because Five Below had Funko Pops, and at the time they were $5. And I remember going there one time, and they had a just out of nowhere, because I had gone there a few times, and there was like, they just always had the constant reused ones, the ones that weren't selling. Like there was a period where they were showing, they had tons of Sprite from the Eternals. I hate that pop. I never bought it. But one time I go to Five Below, and randomly they had two South Park ones for Cartman and Kyle. Cartman was the wizard and Kyle was the high elf. And I remember I immediately got them. And I had this period where every other day I would go to different Five Belows just to check and see if they had just the rare, not rare, but like the occasional off out of left field Funko Pop that you wouldn't normally see, and then they were $5, so I'd get it, right? I kind of got obsessed with that a little bit. I was always going to different Funko Pop stores or different places at like Trader's World, a big flea market up in Ohio. I'd go to all these different things, and I just got obsessed with just going to different places to find Funko Pops. And I even got a system where I'm like, okay, I'm going to rotate these different places. So I mean, every other time I would go to, hopefully it'd be refreshed, and it just, that became like a big hobby obsession. And on Amazon used to have fire deals with Funko Pops that were cheap. Now, I'm a unique collector of Funko Pops in the fact that I don't go to collect every Funko Pop in a specific series. I only collect the Funko Pops that I want. And a lot of the times the ones I want are ones that can be cheaper. So I remember buying like six or seven Funko Pops out off Amazon when they would do like their five and below sales. So I would get those a lot, right? So that's how I pretty much amassed my collection. Now there are some that I've gotten before that weren't necessarily ones I liked. I just ended up either getting them through a gift, or they were cheap and I bought them. There's a couple of them that I found like a Five Below that I thought were cool, and I bought them because they were $5. But then I'm like, oh, well, I mean, I like them, but they're like, if I have, because there's some that I have to put in totes because I'm running out of shelf room. They're definitely being put up because, I like that I have them, but they're not like priority to display, basically. If anybody understands what that means. I really started getting into not necessarily collecting, and I know I said I don't collect everything in like a specific series, but if you're not familiar with Funko Pops, they usually release batches of series, and there's like a collection of Funko Pops that fit in with a certain theme, and people just go out of their way to collect everything in that particular theme. When I do it, it's not necessarily a specific theme that Funko puts out. It's just something that I feel like that I do for my own satisfaction. For example, I'll show you. I don't know why I picked up the mic, but if I can, hopefully you can see it. Up there at the top, you see in the top shelf. You can't see all of them, but that is my personal Doctor Strange Funko Pop collection. I'm still missing a couple more, but I was really obsessed with Doctor Strange. Still like Doctor Strange. So I wanted to get all the different variations. So I have a ton of them. A whole shelf, actually, dedicated to them. I've got Yu-Gi-Oh!, Dragon Ball Z. Those are my two biggest ones I've got. Like I said, I'm collecting all the ones that I like from the series. There's a few that I don't touch if I just not interested in them. So I'm not out there to try to get everything from an IP or a show, but that's just kind of what I'm doing there. So, but yeah, I'm going to kind of start wrapping it up a little bit for this one. I don't want to go too long, but this is kind of what I'm talking about. This is what I want to talk about, just the random stuff that I like, right? And that's just what I want to do. And I can't give you a buffer of what's going to be on the next episode because I honestly don't know, right? I have no clue. So if you have any cool stories about your Funko Pop collections or Funko Pop ideas or something, just leave them in the comments. If you have any questions about some of my videos, any comments, just feel free to say what you want. And, yeah, I appreciate you guys tuning in. I really do. Looking forward to seeing you guys tune in for the next one. So as of now, this is Aaron, aka StudMuffin Supreme, and you've been watching and listening to And Now It's a Podcast. See y'all later.